Fallout 76's test server was just updated with what will end up being the final major update of 2022 for the game, coming out at some point this winter. This is Nuka World returning to Fallout 76 as basically a new on-the-go Nuka World fair has come to Appalachia. And although fairs are generally temporary, this one is permanent, and that is a very good thing. As after playing through most of the new content, I think this has a very good chance to be Fallout 76's best update since Wastelanders, at least in my opinion. I genuinely had more fun playing this new content than I've had in years playing Fallout 76 overall, and in this video I'll explain why and why this is actually a pretty big deal for the game going forward, as this new content was largely made not by Bethesda. So let's first look at what was actually new and added here. Of course, first and foremost, there is a new location. Nuka World on Tour has arrived in Appalachia, and you'll find the new fairgrounds in the Ash Heap region. And this is actually a pretty major part of the DLC overall, and one of the reasons I love it so much, everything happens here at the fairgrounds. There's going to be new miscellaneous objectives, new events, and even a new boss fight, but all of them are contained within the grounds. And it creates this really fun environment because rather than doing an event and then fast traveling back to your camp, everyone's more or less just hanging out here. It genuinely feels like there's a fair going on in Fallout 76 with most of the server being here. The main part of the update is going to be the 3 new events that are added into the game. Spin the Wheel is a familiar point defense event. You're going to have these 3 statues that you'll have to protect from waves of enemies as they attack you. But it has some fun twists with Nuka World. First, you'll be introduced to the event overall by Cappy and Bottle.
I'm Cappy! And I'm Bottle. Whoops, I forgot the rules. Can you explain them?
And for each wave of the defense, you're going to spin a wheel to determine what type of enemy actually attacks you and what you'll be doing during that wave. So all kinds of different enemies each round, different mixes of 2 enemies at a time, but then also sometimes you might land on a random objective. So things like Brahmin tipping, catching chicken that have escaped, or even trying to dodge explosions as they appear at the ground. And there's even some tougher boss level enemies that will be mixed in all throughout. All of this is taking place in a giant tent, which just kind of adds to this experience. And although the event in general is pretty simple, you're just defending some statues against enemies attacking them, the addition of this spin the wheel in the middle to determine what is actually attacking or what misc activity you'll have to do is a really nice touch, and it definitely elevates this event to the next level. Most Wanted will take you to the Wild West part of the fairgrounds. You'll be tasked with sacking the town. You're going to be stealing tickets from the townsfolk as well as looting some of the safes as you find them, and all throughout there's going to be waves of deputies attempting to stop you. You're going to have to do this until you fully load up the getaway wagon, and once you're done, you will defend the getaway wagon from more waves of enemies who will also try and stop you and attack the wagon. And in the end, there's going to be a final sheriff robot that comes out as a boss fight. Unfortunately, with the legacy problem in Fallout 76, this wasn't much of a fight at all, but this too was a really fun event. It was definitely the most fun I've had in Fallout 76 with the run around and look for something formula. There's a lot of things using that, especially expeditions, where it was tedious and not fun, but things were relatively easy to find here, and just in general, having this kind of western theme in a little town was really cool. And last but certainly not least, we do have the Tunnel of Love that has some of the most interesting level design of any of the events. You're going to be tasked with helping fix this ride, and that'll involve setting up some of the decorations as you find them, fixing the tracks as you uncover the broken track, and in the end, building a bot to hold a wedding for the ride operator. And this is an actual thing that happens during this event. You recreate this little robot out of scraps, then you marry that robot to the other robot, and you watch the wedding happen. This event will have some enemies throughout as you're trying to do things like fix the track or just running around in general, but it's definitely less combat focused compared to the other two. And it was more about just running around this interior world space and trying to find the thing to complete the quest objective. It was probably my least favorite of the 3 new public events, but the wedding at the end is this cool Fallout 76 moment where like half the server is just sitting there watching a robot wedding take place, which is kind of hilarious. So those are the 3 new public events that will be added to the public event pool, but that's not all. There's also going to be the short quest to introduce you to the new boss fight. A member of the Nuka World on Tour team is having trouble getting the roller coaster working. This is due to some kind of mysterious new creature that is reportedly preventing it from happening. We're going to go investigate this, specifically taking us to Abandoned Mineshaft 2. It's a short quest overall, but in the end what you'll discover is, oh, you need to launch a nuke on Mineshaft 2 to get the Ultrasight Titan out of it. This is going to be a giant mutated mutated mole rat, and this is an interesting one in that you actually nuke the mine shaft, but the Ultracite Titan will spawn in the Nuka World on Tour area. So kind of a bit similar to Earl, you actually are not going to be inside of a nuked area as you're fighting this guy. You basically nuke the mine so this thing crawls out the other end so you're not in a nuked area. Very handy for those of you that don't like dealing with power armor. But I would say this boss fight is probably my favorite of the 3 boss fights in the game. It's going to be broken up into stages, so once the Titan spawns, you must take out these Ultracite crystals in front of him, and then once you do that, you can actually deal damage to them. And then once you deal enough damage, it'll burrow back down and move to a different spot at random. And then you repeat that process, taking out the Ultracite crystals, dealing more damage, and it'll move again. This does seem like a decent way to make the boss fight actually last a decent amount of time and not have somebody just one-shot the boss. It doesn't actually seem like you can one-shot the boss, and especially if you don't have as many people during the event, it seems like there will be some coordination required to take out the Ultracite crystals while also fending off the boss. As well as he does have a variety of different attacks he can use against you, whether it be slamming the ground, just melee, or even the squirting attack. But all that still isn't all, as in the park you'll also be able to go to the NukaCade. This will feature a ton of different games that you can actually play. It'll cost you 1 cap each, and as you play the game, and if you actually do well at the game, you'll be able to win some NukaCade points. These can be spent on a variety of items. This is how you'll get some of the new rewards and new things added in with this DLC. And although playing the games themselves is one way to get these points, you also get them in larger batches by completing some of the events around the park. But the NukaCade overall is such a cool addition with this. You're able to actually play against and with other people at these games, but also it creates this really cool environment where you'll just genuinely find people playing arcade games in Fallout 76. Like whether it be whack-a-mole or trying to hit the targets or things like that, you'll just stumble upon this park after doing an event because, of course, the event will be taking place right next door to this. So you kind of naturally flow over here and you'll find a ton of people doing these missed things and just is really cool. But speaking of rewards, there's of course going to be a bunch of those. Some of these will be exclusive to the NukaCade, so you'll be able to unlock the Thirst Zapper here, and more importantly, some new Thirst Zapper mods. You can edit the weapon to deal a ton more damage with either Quantum or Cherry mods now, and then you'll have to reload it after each shot. This, of course, being based off what we had in Fallout 4. Really cool, and also just fun to have it in Fallout 76 finally. But even further, there's a bunch of camp item versions of these arcade games, so you can place them down in your own camp if you want to. There's a variety of new unique weapons added as well, just by completing some of the other events you could do around Nuka World on Tour. You'll unlock these, and they're going to be specific legendary variants of typical Fallout 76 weapons that will have a unique skin. So these aren't totally new weapons added in, but rather a unique version of an existing weapon. So it'll have unique skin, and with several of them, they will actually have 4 different effects on them. I'm not really sure any of these are game-changing, especially when so many users just use legacies most of the time, but they are pretty fun, and some are a bit more custom, like this cannon that will explode into almost fireworks as you fire it. Although I could see how once people get their hands on these, and a lot of people get their hands on these, it'll get pretty tedious to have this going off at every event. Another, something like an auto axe or a fully custom new weapon would be more exciting. I actually think I got more satisfaction out of these new weapons because it was instant gratification. There wasn't some massive grind to unlock them. You just play the event, and a lot of times as a reward, you'll unlock one of these cool new weapons. So it immediately felt like you accomplished something. It may not be a game-changing weapon, you may not be switching your build for any of these, although some people probably will switch their build for some of these, but it's still fun. It didn't require weeks of grinding to actually get that new content. There's also going to be a ton of new chem items added with this, a variety of which are absolutely hilarious and thematically perfect for a fairgrounds type setting. I'll have to do a deeper dive into all of the different chem items that were added, as some of these definitely seem like they could be pretty powerful, but to me they were just kind of a fun prize that you would get from doing some of these events, and a nice little cherry on top of something a bit more custom. But also of course a ton of camp items that were added to basically all of the events as new prizes. There is a massive amount of new camp content added with this update, or I guess it will be added once it actually goes live since it's still on the public test server. But either way, a lot of cool stuff you'll be able to place around your camp. I don't want to dive too deeply into the rewards, as some of this stuff can be changed in the future. That is something Bethesda has changed in the past, and they've actually already stated how this public test server will only be going up for 1 week at a time. It seems like going forward they're going to be using a 1 week on, 1 week off, and then 1 week back on schedule, so they can have it out, get a bunch of feedback, address that feedback, and then put it back out again. Although even outside of the new Nuka World on Tour stuff, this will also ship with a new Fallout First feature of an ammo box. Similar to the scrap box, this will be something with unlimited weight where you can store all of your ammo, although it doesn't actually apply for cores, so fusion nor plasma cores can be placed here, but still kind of handy. A nice added benefit for Fallout First. It's definitely not as handy as something like a scrap box, but I guess better than no new Fallout First stuff. Although of course it would just be a lot cooler if this was added as a free item for everyone and not locked behind the subscription. And overall, I really think this is going to be one of the best updates to come to Fallout 76 in a very long time. I had more fun playing this DLC compared to Expeditions or Steel Rain, and it really wasn't even close. I think what Nuka World on Tour does really well is a cohesive vision. You can go to this new fairgrounds and all of this new content is just focused here with a common theme. Whether it be some of the new snacks you unlock, some of the new weapons you'll get relatively quickly, or the events themselves. All of it's taking place here and it's all Nuka World themed. This kind of turns into a common area. There's a bunch of crafting tables and stash boxes or even the new ammo box all located here, so you don't really have to leave if you don't want to. And it has a really high sense of community. As you finish one event, you'll kind of stumble into the NukaCade or just see what other people are doing around you, and everyone hangs out in this area, which is a really cool experience. It creates a nice atmosphere in the game, almost like you are genuinely going to the fair with the other players on your server. Cohesion is definitely something Bethesda has struggled with past updates. Thematically, some of the updates are kind of all over the place. Like we get a Brotherhood of Steel questline, but then other Brotherhood of Steel content comes in several updates later over several months or even years after the fact. It just kind of feels dragged out and like it would have been better as one thing, and it feels like Nuka World on Tour is a response to that in a way. It really is one thing, all Nuka World themed, and it's cool. And for me, I feel like even though I prefer quest content, Nuka World on Tour has a huge fun factor to it. It just wasn't there as much with something like Expeditions, which Expeditions I think had way more potential, but Nuka World on Tour is just kind of fun. I think the theme, the community aspect, it all comes together to just be an enjoyable experience. And if you already own Fallout 76, this is one of the first updates in a while where I think I'm going to recommend people re-download the game just to play it, even if you only play for a weekend. It is genuinely fun to visit Nuka World in Fallout 76 with a couple of friends or even just a bunch of strangers on a server. This update isn't without downsides though, and one of the major downsides is, in particular at launch, you may have a hard time participating. Bethesda Game Studios has still not fixed the lingering legacy issue, with these weapons just dealing ridiculous amounts of damage, and that means during some of the events I had a hard time even finding an enemy to hit because some players were just literally one-shotting everything. Obviously, as time goes on and less people participate in these events and they aren't packed full of high-level players, this will be less of a problem, but legacies are a massive issue in this game and it desperately needs to be addressed. There are some hopes that with one of the later versions of this PTS, we could see some changes around legacy weapons. As I mentioned earlier, it's going to be up for a week, then down for a week, then come back, so maybe after one of the times it's down, we could see that addressed, but there's been no word on that from Bethesda at least. And in general, I'm actually really happy this update is as fun as it is because it gets me incredibly excited for the future of Fallout 76, or at the very least more hopeful for it. On one hand, this is the very first time Bethesda is actually hitting the final stage of their roadmap. Every other year for Fallout 76, they have missed the final winter update, whether it was delayed entirely or the vast majority of it was delayed. And although technically this one isn't out yet, a lot of the content is there and it definitely seems like it'll be out in a timely manner. But even further, this is the first DLC that was made predominantly by the new support studio with 011. And even further, we've actually seen several members of the community join 011, like the developers behind the Fallout 3 remake mod and even more notably the Point Lookout remake. I don't know if they worked on Nuka World on Tour specifically, but they're working at 011. And with how fun all of this has been, it makes me hopeful that the future 011 plus Bethesda content could be really good. Either way, those are my thoughts on Nuka World on Tour. I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments down below. Whether you're somebody who actively plays Fallout 76 or doesn't, what do you think about this? Will this get you to play more of the game or even just reinstall the game for a week or two? With that said, as always again, I thank you for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this one, but with that, I hope to see you all next time. Later.